Across the world, on the 27th of June globally, the world celebrates micro, small and medium enterprises. And in Nigeria also, we have, commemorated yesterday specifically, the effort of the resilience, especially of, micro, small and medium enterprises to stay afloat, even in the Nigerian economy with a not so favorable business environment. And today that will be our focus on Business Daily. We shall be looking at the state of the Nigeria's entrepreneurial ecosystem. What is it like to run a business in Nigeria, despite the bureaucratic bottlenecks and challenges that business owners, especially nano, micro, small and medium enterprises, face on a day-to-day basis? Well, we put out a poll on social media asking Nigerians, what is it like to run a small business? And we did get quite a number of responses. And the question that we put out was, share your thoughts. In celebration of MSME Day, we want to hear from Nigerian business owners. What are the biggest challenges you face in your business? Your feedback is crucial in highlighting and addressing the challenges of MSMEs in Nigeria. Hashtag MSME Day, hashtag Nigeria, hashtag small business, hashtag entrepreneurship, hashtag business challenges. And we did get quite a number of interesting responses. Let's highlight some of these responses that we did get. Ejike Sami is saying multiple taxation, lack of power and high cost of energy and government, lack of thought out policies, especially Naira floating and subsidy is gone, which is currently showing every average Nigerian Shege Pro Max. Thank you, Ejike, for sending in your comment. Away from that now, Abayomi is saying, unstable government policies is the main setback to developing MSMEs as well as industrialization. Well said, Abayomi. Thank you for sending in your comment. And Johnny is saying capital to invest. A lot of these commenters have, made reference to access to finance, talking about capital investment. But Muhammad Tuko Usman is saying Nigerian situation stops almost everything, and we are not happy for bearing this poverty hardship on us. I call it bearing because of government is awarded of this pandemic poverty. I'm not so sure what Muhammad is trying to say, but thank you, Muhammad, for sending in your comment. And Kamis Zachary is saying insufficient fund, and also even the interest is one of the major problems if you take a loan, talking about high interest rates that you have to pay back when you take loans from financial institutions. But thank you, Kamis, for sending in your comment. And Clement Onomudeke is saying insufficient funds, site of business, collection of levies from different local government agencies. That is multiple taxation. Unfortunately, sometimes you hear these business owners talking about, being taxed by the federal government, by the state government, by the local government, by the thugs on the street. So multiple taxation right there. But thank you, Clement, for sending in your comment. Away from Clement's comment now, Rufai Ahmed is saying foreign exchange. That is the increased volatility across Nigeria's foreign exchange market. Thank you, Rufai, for sending in your comment. And Paul Isaac is saying volatility in the exchange rate, which affects business planning, the very unstable, harsh business environment. We hope to survive. We indeed hope to survive as business owners and entrepreneurs here in Nigeria. Lawal Yerima is saying cost of raw materials is high. Indeed. Thank you, Lawal, for sending in your comment. And Ike Gabriel is saying accessing loans has been one of the biggest challenges, talking about accessing loans. Again, well, you've heard from Nigerians talking about the challenges that they face as nano, micro, small business enterprise owners here in Nigeria. But we do have a professional on the ground who is going to, shed light on whether or not there is any, point in celebrating MSMEs, and also talked about the, current state of the Nigerian entrepreneurial ecosystem. I'm joined now by an economic analyst, Dr. Aliyu Ilias. Thank you, Doctor, for coming on the program this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, Doctor, from your own lens, how would you say the current, or what would you say is the current state of the Nigerian entrepreneurial system or ecosystem, especially since, this week there has been increased conversations around, ensuring that small businesses stay afloat to mark the MSME day, that is the 27th of June. But how would you say small businesses are faring currently here in Nigeria?
Right, I think we are actually at the point of where every business needs to survive by itself, whereby you produce your electricity, you look for your capital, you actually look for everything, whereby in a very good climate, you see that governments are intentional to provide infrastructure for small business. So in Nigeria today, virtually every small business are struggling to survive first 5 years because of the challenges of infrastructure and capital in Nigeria.
Since we are, having more conversations than ever on, the state of the MSMEs here in Nigeria, what will be the one message that you would want to, remain in the minds of policymakers, small business owners, and everyone, basically, as we mark the MSME Day across the world?
I think the first one, the most important one, is availability of capital, because whatever you want to do, no matter the idea you have, you can only be doing it small if you do not have capital. So, but with availability of capital, I think Nigerians can get to do more, think more, be innovative, and actually move our GDP beyond where it is for now. Well,
just stay back. There is still so much to come, especially around the conversations on how MSMEs are currently staying afloat here in Nigeria. My guest is Dr. Aliyu Ilias, an economic analyst, is still on standby. We'll be back after the break. To stay. You're still watching Business Daily, coming to you live on Trust TV. And just before the break, we started a conversation commemorating the World MSME Day. And across the world globally on the 27th of June, business people, policy makers, key players in the organized private sector come out to, have conversations around growing nano, micro, small and medium enterprises. And the same played out here in Nigeria yesterday. And today we are talking about, appraising monitoring the current state of the entrepreneurial ecosystem here in Nigeria. And I have my guest with me. He is Dr. Aliyu Ilias. He is an economic analyst. Thank you, Doctor, for coming on the program.
Thank you for having me. And
Doctor, before the break, you already, started highlighting the challenges that businesses here in Nigeria face. And we have seen, a mass exodus of multinationals and even closing of major businesses across the nation. And what that brings to mind is how much more the smaller businesses, how are they surviving if these other bigger companies are unable to survive? So let's touch on the challenges right now. You talked about issue around, infrastructure, access to finance, regulatory hurdles. These are major challenges. I don't even know where to start from, but let's hear from you.
Right. I think the challenges are very enormous, and it's quite appalling that at this point in time, the government is not prioritizing what they're supposed to prioritize. Because if our MSME works well, a lot of things works well. Because you agree with me that 90% of businesses in Nigeria are MSME owned. And when you see MSME business owned, you know that simply means development. They also bring about a lot of employment. So if you look at what they are bringing into business, you agree that Nigeria have to be intentional about that. And the number one problem we are facing is access to capital. And you notice that most businesses die within 5 years in Nigeria simply because there is not enough access to capital. Because if I have an idea and I start doing it maybe gradually from we call it maybe household contribution for me, I need to grow, and at the point need to grow to look for and that's why you see that fintech are appearing to be the only MSME that is scaling up. Simply because in fintech you don't need to pay rent, but MSME need to pay rent. Fintech, you can do it from the corner of your house, and you can source funds from different areas beyond Nigeria. But other businesses are seriously having an issue. And another issue is the issue of electricity. Without electricity, there is hardly a business that will. So even though if you want to power your lab, a personal computer, you need to power it so that you can really. I can tell you, I have people that I call. They say it's because there is no power. They cannot actually use their phone to do other business. So these are the things that we need. So basic things need to be catered to so as to move. Another major challenge is the exchange rate. Is quite killing now. Most businesses are not surviving exchange rate because by the time you even gather your capital, maybe your capital is 100,000 naira, and see the level of inflation. By the time you do business, the profit would have been eroded, and you cannot sustain the business.
From all of this, if you were to list these challenges in maybe in order of hierarchy, which would you say is the major challenge that needs immediate response, especially from our policymakers?
Right, I would like to tell that it's energy. Energy, because when you say energy, it's cut across a lot of things. We're talking about energy and its infrastructure. Electricity is very key. I tell you, if you have electricity in Nigeria, people will be in the corner of their home, even in rural area, doing a lot of businesses. You just get to be hearing and seeing business. So energy, I think, is the major thing that we need to look at. Perhaps we also look at energy also bring about transportation. If you also produce anything in your locality, how do you bring it to the city center? So these are part of it. So I think number one thing to look at is energy, because most MSME bring about out of ideas. So there's a particular level they need fund to scale, but they must start first. So accessing fund is not the first problem. Infrastructure is the first problem.
Infrastructure, talking about energy, talking about even the roads, basically to transport what it is that they produce. For instance, now farmers would always say that one of the challenges that they face is transporting their produce from the farms to, unfortunately so. But let's now talk to the impact of policies and government initiatives. This year alone, we've seen, quite a number of initiatives and policy that have come out from our policymakers. And MSME, people doing businesses in Nigeria, have not been very comfortable with most of these policies. I'll speak specifically about, interest rate, the rise in monetary policy rate, which we do expect is at some point expected to deflate inflation. But that has not been, has not been easy on micro, small, and medium enterprise owners. But let's hear from you now. How would you say these policies have been effective, especially in the area of, business and ease of doing business in Nigeria?
Right. I think one of the, after we have taken energy as number one, and number two will be capital. Access to capital is a problem. No, accessing capital is a problem simply because of the rate of MPR. The interest rate is a problem. How many Nigerians can go to conventional banks to go and borrow money? And when you are going to borrow money, what are you borrowing the money with? Are you borrowing the money with, they will ask you, do you have a landed property? You know, these are the questions they will ask you. And beyond that, we need to think beyond that. How much do you want to borrow? There's some level of borrowing that could even say you need a traditional ruler to stand for you. You need your NYC certificate. You know, they need to bring it down so that people can easily access 500,000. Okay, I need 500,000. You're telling me to give you a landed property in a highbrow area. How can I do that? So there must be a window that would, but in terms of regulatory, I think the CBN are looking at macro in the face of their own policy making. They are not looking at the micro itself that's really trickled down to man on the streets who is actually doing a weaving in his corner to actually sell, you know, buy and sell. They need to look at that from that perspective. Perhaps there should be a window that if your business is between, I think there's they launch one particular platform. Pathetically, they said it will start from the civil servants, not the actual people on the street. So I think there should be a platform where MSME, you know, you come with your certificate, you know, maybe your CAC certificate, your TIN number, and your business structure. By the time you bring about it, they will give you if you recall, during President Muhammadu Buhari, he actually did what we call ease of doing business. But the ease of doing business was basically on paperwork. So as for you to register at CAC at 8,000, at maybe 20,000. Beyond that, you must also do ease of business, doing business through the supply chain itself. Because it's not enough for me to produce in Sokoto, but find it difficult to bring it down to Abuja. And Abuja is my market. But if I come to Abuja, I may not be able to afford rent, because another problem MSME has is rent. I may not be able to afford rent. But if I can have a good supply chain process, whereby once I produce, I take it into the vehicle. Remember people that are doing courier. Do you know how much the courier takes even within Abuja now? I can tell you from Jabi to central areas about 1,500 naira. And that also affects businesses. Because by the time you are expending such amount to take something to your customer, how much will be your profit? So we must bring it down to the low level and assess. And that's why we said, if you are doing all this policy in terms of MSME, it should be bottom up approach, not somebody who is comfortable in his AC, you know, doing bigger business. And that's why when I saw Dangote, Elumelu was put about in terms of economic plan, I was saying that you're just creating job to satisfy these people, not really bring about the business. Pick people from the core business, let them give you the real advice. They will tell you how things can, and that's why we are still here. If our MSME is doing well, I can tell you Nigeria will go far in terms of economic development, because this MSME also contribute over 50% to our GDP and about 90% of job availability, about over 90% of business enterprise. So how many business are all these multinational actually bring? If you look at how many jobs is government providing, I'm not sure it's up to 20 million, and we have about 150 million people working. That means they fall in that category of MSME. So government must be intentional to provide infrastructure and give a window for MSME.
Well said. You know, talking about how MSMEs are a major contributor to the Nigeria's GDP, and obviously, like they say, the major backbone of the Nigerian economy. But I'd like for us to talk to issues around access to finance. You saw when we read the comments that we received from our social media users, that was a reoccurring comment talking about access to loans, paying back loans, repayment plans, collaterals, access to finance, basically. And if I'm throwing this question at you, Doctor. If our banks are not the most suitable or the easiest places to access loans right now, what are the alternatives for small business owners?
Right, I think a bank is still the best, because you know, we do have a bank of industry, we do have a bank of agriculture, we do have NISA, we have a whole lot of them. But I think the best way government can do is channel the fund through banks, because banks are where is everywhere in Nigeria, where everybody can easily apply to. But I can also score Bank of Industry to an extent, because I recall during President Muhammadu Buhari, most companies go to scale up. You know, it's not enough for you to be a MSME. If you are an MSME for 5 years and you are not scaling, you will die. So the best thing is not only for you to provide funds for MSME, also watch them, follow them before you can scale. Because I recall BOI did a very structured program then that if they are giving you funds, somebody must guide you on the finance, on the structure, because you must have a structure. Because one of the problems we also have in Africa is that most of our businesses are not well structured, and that's why it's pretty difficult for them to scale. So I think government should do more, BOI should come to do more, because when you say small and medium scale, people always think it's much more of manufacturing or industry. Even an agricultural person, a farmer is also a small business person. A manufacturer is a small business person. In tech is a small business person. Consultancy is a small business person. So a lot of it is there. So they have to identify and do it sector by sector. But I think the best way is through either microfinance or bank, because how many will BOI actually do? Maybe they have a regional five regional office. How many person can access them? But imagine if I can access microfinance in Adabi local government in Kogi, somebody can access in Nasarawa, in Kaduna, and Kanu. So these are the things we need to look at and all these business people, market people need to have access, and that's why we have issue with trader money, market money. Then if you actually go back to assess the impact, it does not have any impact, because some of us think you don't need to give people money. What you need to do is that maybe in the structure of the business, tell them to access a particular raw material at a cheaper rate. That would have helped, because there would be multiplier effect of it. Someone who supplies, someone who buy, that would have go around. But not for you to say take 50,000. No. What raw material do you need? Pay to the raw material directly, so the person can continue in business and let them supply the person.
You have emphasized on the scalability prospects of a micro, small, and medium enterprise. If you remain at a certain level for years, then you have a problem. So I'd like for us to talk to issues around the opportunities and the scaling opportunities specifically. Are there sectors specifically that you will recommend that holds promises for growth, especially for small businesses? Are there some sectors that if you go into and run a business in, the prospect of you scaling up is higher?
Right. You recall that NSIP, social investment program, it's bring about Empower. And the essence of Empower is for people to be in that job for 3 years, then they would have understudy, then go into business. So we have NTech, we have NAgro, we have NTax, we have NTeach. What are actually the aim of those things, if it's well organized, is to expose people to those jobs. And that's why we say sometimes you have to let people understudy. So when you talk about scalability, I think the best area to scale now more, if you ask me, is tech. It's tech, because tech, a lot of people are in need of it. Then you don't need facility to actually scale up in tech so much. You only need the knowledge itself. And
the infrastructure, the internet, the gadgets.
Well, the thing is, you have to invest in yourself first in that area. So once you have the knowledge itself, it will drive you. So you don't need to pay rent. Even sometimes you don't even need to actually register with government, because it's a private consultancy. So you can be on your own and said, okay, I want to build some code for you. I can do. But in other sector, there isn't for government to be interested in those businesses. In manufacturing, small people that are manufacturing small things need to be encouraged. And that's why I always talk about AFCTFA trade area. It's a problem for Nigeria if we are not taking good care of it. Now, I expect government to say, okay, no textile should come into Nigeria. You know why? So that Nigeria own textile can actually grow and scale. No shoemaking, no shoe already made shoe should come to Nigeria, so that our people can actually grow in shoemaking and develop it better. No manufacturer of vehicle should do finished vehicle and bring it. They should come and come and assemble it here. All these things will create job for the small medium, and they will scale from there. But if you don't create that market for them, it's a problem. They cannot compete.
But doesn't that defeat the idea behind the African Free Trade Continental Agreement? Access to market, not just the market Nigeria as a country provides, but the entire West Africa and Africa.
Let's be sincere with ourselves. If you go and check South Africa, they are not actually accepting it very well. Do you know why? In Africa today, Nigeria have the highest population, right? beyond population, we also have the money. This is what people don't think. We can afford a lot of things as a Nigerian, and we have the population. So because of that population and what we have, we are supposed to think inward and not saying that everything should come into the market. You recall even Trump, he said American first. If Toyota want to produce, they should come and be producing in their country, not produce in Japan and call it American spec. So you must make sure that you encourage your local infant industry to grow. And how do you let it grow? You just have to say no to those ones that will bring. And that's why we are able to make some steps in rice production. Because we have to say, okay, don't bring rice from Thailand again. We must produce rice here. And it will suffer it for like 2 years. But now I can tell you, rice production, if at all, the economy is not still helping the cost of it. But in terms of rice production, Nigeria has gone a bit far. So to develop our economy, to have a productive economy, you must make sure you don't accept everything. Don't let Nigeria be dumping ground. You know why? Some of them have competitive advantage. So if they have competitive advantage, let us also explore our comparative advantage by saying, no, these are the produce that you don't bring to Nigeria. Let me give you an example of textile. Most textile that we use in Nigeria are from Cote d'Ivoire. So what are you doing? You are taking our job opportunity, employment opportunity down to Cote d'Ivoire. You are creating job there and you are importing poverty. That's what simply means. So, but when you encourage Nigerians that we must produce, let me give you a funny one. Do you know there is now China Ajire, where they go to China and produce Ajire that used to be produced in Abeokuta, and Abeokuta cannot compete with China. So if you open the market, the person in Abeokuta is going to, that is a MSME person, he will lose the business out. But you're supposed to say, no, don't import that from China. Let us also mechanize the production of what? Of Adire in Nigeria and bring it to scale. So if you don't have that intention to also make sure that you don't bring everything down to Nigeria, we'll continue to be in poverty.
So in essence, you're saying that small businesses here in Nigeria should be given priority.
Yes, should be protected so that they can grow and scale. If you don't scale, there's no way we can be in business. It's a difficult thing. And that's what China was able to do. Remember, China closed border for 30 years and decided doing things in-house. Even in America today, it's not everything you can take into their country. In UK, it's not everything you can. They are selective. In fact, in South Africa, there's only 5 brands of car. So, but in Nigeria, we have about 38 that I counted myself, 38 brands of car. And they bring it at every level, you know. But those 5 in South Africa will tell you that they must come and assemble here in South Africa. But in Nigeria, we bring every type of products of cars to Nigeria. And that's why we are not scaling. And that's why Poggio is dying. Nord is not surviving. Innocent is not surviving well as expected. So if you have given that opportunity that they should come, it should have bring it down. We don't have to use all the brands of car. We should have the one that will agree with. And those who agree with that, we tell them that you must assemble those cars here. And since we cannot afford new cars also, you can also tell Toyota that if we are importing to Kumbo, you must also come and produce some parts here. That's how we create job and people will be engaged.
I would like for us to talk to issues around, ensuring that Nigeria is not a dumping ground. You've made reference to AFTA, that is the African Free Trade Continental Agreement. But then again, we have agencies of government that, are, shouldered with the responsibility of ensuring accountability and ensuring that these products are up to standard. Talking about the Standards Organization of Nigeria, NAFDAC, and the likes. With you making reference to, Nigeria not being a dumping ground, don't you believe that these agencies have roles to play in ensuring that this doesn't happen? I mean, you're frowning against AFTA and saying Nigeria first, prioritizing Nigeria above other countries that have also ratified this agreement.
It's a 2 different things for Sun. Sun is concerned with MANCAP and SUNCAP. What are they concerned about? They are concerned about standard. NAFDAC is concerned about standard. What about local produce? What I'm saying is that it's not a responsibility of Standard Commission to say, no, we don't want this product. It's another agency.
Or the Nigeria Customs Service.
We should talk about Nigeria Ministry of Trade, Industry and Investment. That is their own responsibility to identify produce that Nigerians should be doing it themselves without import. It's not the responsibility of those, even custom. It is when you tell custom don't bring this produce into Nigeria. Custom will now do it. So I think it's the responsibility of Nigeria trade investment to actually look into that area. It's very, very key. If you don't look, and that's why we don't have balance of trade and balance of payment. It's because we're not looking at what we should be self-sufficient and export it out. So until we look at that area, that's even the issue of small business and whatever, it still lies on Ministry of Trade Investment. They are the ones to look at such items and actually identify that this item should not come. We should be doing it in Nigeria, and they are the one also negotiating with AFTA. Right? It's trade and investment. It's not even SON. It's not NAFDAC. They are not even in the in the decision making. So it's that minister that will now look at these are the items that we do not want people to bring into Nigeria. We should be self-sufficient and be producing it in Nigeria. And Nigeria will now come behind those industry and say yes. We can actually, I can tell you, I have a cable company that actually came up for cable. It doesn't last for one year. It died simply because we have one that is coming from South Africa. So if government say, okay, this cable company, let me support you to an extent so that you can compete favorably. They did not support it, and I can tell you it's dead now. And it's because they don't have that support. So why are you not supporting homegrown businesses? If you look at South Africa, look at all their companies in Nigeria, they follow them because they know that if this company die, their GDP is going to have issue. So
let us touch now on the role of technology and innovation. You already touched on that briefly, talking about infrastructure to ensure that businesses are able to convert in some areas. I mean, there's some walk-in stores now that own e-commerce platforms and no longer a physical store, and that is preached amongst the business enthusiasts in Nigeria. So I'd like for us to talk to the role of technology and innovation, having the right infrastructure from internet penetration to availability of gadgets and just all that we need to ensure that Nigerians have a level playing field in Africa when it comes to digitization and technology innovation. What role do you see innovation playing, and what should the government be doing to ensure that, talking about agencies of government like NITSDA and the likes, to ensure that Nigerian small businesses can compete favorably when it comes to technology?
I think when you talk about innovation in terms of technology, Nigeria is Nigerians are doing very well in terms of innovation and technology.
I believe Nigeria is top 3 in Africa.
Right, top 3 in Africa. But the problem is the enabling environment. That's why we are having these issues. Because if you talk about e-commerce, Nigerians are there. Tell me about any area of technology that Nigerians are not keeping up with. But the thing is, the infrastructure, are they actually available? Then are they not also have a breach? The thing is, you must also be in the cloud to actually make things secure. That's another problem. But in terms of technology, tell me the area of technology. Is it media you want to talk about? Is it e-commerce you want to talk about? Is it the only area we are still lacking behind in technology is agriculture area, which I think is still government, because we have a lot of institutes starting with that responsibility, and that's why government must attract more youth to that sector. The more you attract more youth to that sector, the more technology will begin. And that's why you must encourage them, because of the value chain. Because we are not actually taking advantage of the value chain in agriculture. If you go to even common Ethiopia here, you see that they have cargo that always come maybe every 2 days to take produce and take it to America. And another thing we need to do is about standardization. Some of us have to also key into ISO, standard practice globally, so that if you do that, I think we can actually scale. So we must attract the youth into the agricultural sector. By attracting them, the thinking will now start to work. And I think Osibajo led some team to that level that time, but we have not seen more energy in that area. So I think we should do more in that area.
Well said, Doctor. I have been speaking with Dr. Aliyu Ilias, who is an economic analyst, and we have spoken extensively on, appraising the current entrepreneurial ecosystem here in Nigeria. And this is to mark the World MSME Day, where, conversations around scaling up small businesses is put at the front burner. Thank you, Doctor, for all the insight you've shared today.
Thank you for having me.
And this is where we draw the curtains on today's edition of the program. But join the conversation on social media and let us hear from you. What should be the major conversation this week, especially as the world is conversing and having dialogues around growing small, medium, and small and medium enterprises across the world. My name is Chiamaka Enendu. Thank you for watching, and bye for now.